All right, let's gather back around here. We have our next panel from the South. Boy, so manageable. Quiet down immediately. Jeez. Well, hopefully everybody enjoyed the snacks. They'll still be out for a little bit. If I would really appreciate it if people did not eat all the mint brownies because I did not get one. So I will be back there in a second. So this panel follows on the theme of having a regional panel of folks from the faith, law enforcement, and business. I'll introduce our moderator, Stephan Bauman, CEO of World Relief, and I just want to give a sincere thanks to Jenny Yang and the entire team at World Relief and Matt Sorens, who we met earlier, just for being incredible partners at so many levels and just visionaries in terms of how the evangelical community engages in the immigration system. And Stephan and his staff based in Baltimore have been key allies in World Relief and their offices across the country, and I'll buy a second until you've turned off your technology. Second is up. Stephan Bauman, CEO of World Relief. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ali. Could we envision together a day when we come together to celebrate legislation, comprehensive immigration reform? I think we perhaps feel as though we're on the precipice of something big. And would it be that our children, grandchildren ask us one day to tell the story? What were the key people? What were the key events? And we're part of that story. And we're part of making history. So it's exciting to be here. Thank you. Let me first have each of you to introduce yourself. And then I'm going to turn to some questions. So starting down at the end, Mayor Bridges, please.
I'm Paul Bridges from Uvalda, Georgia. It's a small town in southeast Georgia. And as most of you probably know, Georgia is, the economy is boosted by agriculture, primarily agriculture.
Great. Jeb Bush Jr., based in Miami, Florida. Politically speaking, involved with SunPAC, which is a conservative organization which is promoting conservative values to young Hispanics, Latinos across the country. So, we have comprehensive immigration reform is certainly one of our main focuses, as well as education reform, and honored to be here.
And I'm David Fleming. I'm the senior pastor of Champion Force Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. I'm really glad that we're building a consensus.
Bert, Lemkes. I'm with Wingerden, a greenhouse company in western North Carolina. We employ a lot of Hispanics in our business and in other businesses throughout our state agriculture.
So badges, Bibles, and business. Let's start with business today. Bert, if I can turn to you, would you help us put a human face? These are people. A human face on the people that work in your business. Bert has 37 acres of greenhouses in South Carolina. Help us put a human face on it and their challenges and also your challenges in your business in South Carolina.
In North Carolina.
Sorry, North Carolina.
That's okay.
I will make that mistake once.
The people in our business, in our greenhouses, are, like part of a family. We're in greenhouses, so we're a year-round business. We have seasonal fluctuations. The part all through agriculture, not just in our business, is that the people that we employ enjoy what they are doing. And it takes quite an effort to work, either if you're outside picking tomatoes or apples, or you work inside a greenhouse. It's hard work, it's tough work, but they enjoy it, and they come in every day with a smile, and they leave with a smile in the afternoon. And the challenge for us right now is that because of all the efforts at state level, that there is a fear throughout the whole community that something bad's going to happen. It can happen today, it can happen tomorrow. Our county is in a 287G program, and there is definitely a scare with people coming and going from work, roadblocks, driver's license checks, etc. And Agriculture does not want to be in this position. We want a legal workforce. We have to find a solution for what has happened in the past, for today, and for tomorrow.
You mentioned the word fear, Bert. Moving over to the south and into your world, David, you said to me earlier in a conversation that it was controversial when you first stepped into this. Mm-hmm. And we now see a consensus building, even in the buckle of the Bible Belt, as evangelicals call it, in Texas. Mm-hmm. Tell us that story. What were the first things you did and when you took a stand, and what do you see now in your church and across parts of the Texas?
Well, I came to Houston 6 years ago, and I was drawn to the city because of its diversity. And Houston's now known as the most diverse city in America. It's surpassed Los Angeles and New York in its diversity. So it's not something that we can ask the what-if question. Ours is. It's a reality. So we're a very diverse city. And not just the inner city or the intense urban areas, but the suburbs as well. In fact, there are 2 suburban areas that are even more diverse than the inner city of Houston. So it's quite an amazing thing, and it's working wonderfully. It's a healthy economy, there's great integration. And I pastor a church with a vision to reflect our entire community in order to reach our entire community. So we started out 6 years ago to be one church in 2 languages. We've passed that recently, one church in 3 languages now, adding Portuguese. But we wanted a church that reflect both the Anglo, the African American, the Hispanic, the Asian community. In anybody in our community, we felt like we wanted to create an atmosphere and an environment where they could come and meet the Lord. So that's been our vision. Well, along the way of implementing that vision, we ran into almost immediately some of the real-time issues of the immigration crisis. I met a young man in the hallway. He was distraught. I could tell there was a problem. The pastor and me went over and said, "How can I help?" And his response to me was, you can't help me, which I haven't been in Texas very long, but 6 years is enough to act like a Texan. And so I said, "Oh, no, we can help you. We are a can-do folks here. We can help you." He said, "No, Pastor, I appreciate it, but really you can't help me." So I urged him on to tell me the rest of the story, and the story was essentially that he came legally, but through circumstances got caught up in a system that wasn't working for him, and he was faced with a very difficult decision. He wanted to do the right thing, but there was great cost to doing that. And so I said, "Hey, there's got to be a solution. We can solve this." Well, guess what I discovered? He was right. I couldn't help him. And so that began sort of a journey for me of discovering what was really at stake here is there are 2 sides initially, 6 years ago, both very strong, passionate, opinionated sides, and neither really wanting to move towards the middle where there's a solution. And what most of us agree to is that there's no solution on either pole of this discussion. There's a lot of grenade throwing back and forth and a lot of name calling and such as that. But in the middle is Francisco. And I'm trying to figure out how to help this brother. And he's just the first of several, and not even from Latin American countries, from the Caribbean, from Asia, from Europe, from all over the world, really. There's no solution on either pole. So in my frustration, I said, well, I know what this party says, and I know what this party says. What does God say? And I began to get into God's Word and really study on the immigration issue. And then I stood in our pulpit, and I preached what God showed me from His Word to say, and it was a bit controversial. I felt like I was on an island. What I'm grateful to say is the people of our church really received it wonderfully, because they were frustrated too. They recognized there's a problem, the solutions that have been put forward haven't worked, at least been incomplete, and nobody's talking solutions anymore. What does God say? And when I showed them from the Scriptures, as Matt says, if we start from the Scriptures, that's our compass, it's where our beginning point. People said, that's right, that's what God said, and it really forged a great consensus within our church. Some pastors got on board, and I was able to work together with the Houston Area Pastors Council and some friends. We drafted a document, and over 1,000 pastors signed on to it. And it really created something kind of special and wonderful in the Houston area and then across Texas. A lot of pushback. And what we thought then was we were really reinventing the wheel. We were saying something nobody else was saying. So that's why I said earlier, I'm really glad we're forging a consensus, because this is essentially what we said 4 years ago in Houston. And I hear more and more people saying, and what I'm discovering is if we can get more voices speaking in a practical, biblical, balanced middle, we can pull those extremes back toward the middle. That seems to be what's happening. So I'm just thrilled to see the movement, and to be joined by so many folks like this. I feel like I'm at home now.
David, what would you say have been the primary factors that have pushed people from controversy to joining the realm of consensus? What are some of those core things? You mentioned Scripture in the Bible.
Right. I would start there. I think, I'm speaking from an evangelical perspective. Christian folks want to do what's right. They want to have the heart of God, and they want to do what's pleasing to God. So when you look into God's Word and see what He says, that's what we want to do. The second aspect would be just the human element. When you meet someone who qualifies as one of these terms that have been thrown around so flippantly and in so many derogatory ways, when you meet someone and discover the humanity there, the family, the spouse, the children, the grandparents, these are real people, and they are hurting in so many ways. And the next thing you want to do is help them, and when you find out you can't, then you get really, you spoke earlier about anger, what creates the anger, the response that leads to action. When you meet people who are hurting and they're caught in a system that's not working, there's something in a human person, I believe in the heart of a Christian, that says we've got to do something. And I think not only the biblical perspective, but then the real human aspect of this. It's not a political issue for us. It's a moral, biblical, personal, human issue, and we're moved to action.
Thank you. Mayor Bridges, you live deep in the South. You're a mayor of a city in Georgia, and you've taken a public position against Georgia's anti-immigration laws. Could you tell us why? And then as you do so, tell us progress that you feel is being made in your state.
When Georgia proposed the HB 87, I was all in favor. Yes, we've got to do something about immigration. Everybody in Georgia says we've got to do something. Everybody knows the federal government has done nothing. So I was all in favor of it, but when I actually read what the bill said, I was shocked. My conscience was shocked because it was attacking not only the folks they were calling illegal, but anyone who was associated with the person they called illegal. In other words, if someone had a person in their car who they knew was undocumented, they were subject to a $1,000 fine and a year in jail. If they had someone in their home who they knew was undocumented, then they were subject to the same. Well, I fell into that class because I had lots of friends who I knew were undocumented. I knew their children were U.S. citizen children, and they're welcome into my home. So I was able to find out that there was going to be a lawsuit filed against Georgia, and I had to swallow my Republican pride because I've said a lot of ugly things about the ACLU, and I had to eat that because they became my friends, and and had it not been for that, had it not been for that lawsuit, I probably could be in jail now because that lawsuit blocked those two parts. So I'm not a criminal because of that today. What I found in my journey through this is that I hate to use ignorance of the issues and prejudice of the issues is the biggest thing that we confront with this immigration issue in South Georgia, because the people have just swallowed hook, line, and sinker the issue of the sound bites that are given out in the airways every day. But when one approaches the people who are saying this and you get them to use critical thinking on what the issue really is, you find that they turn and they understand the issues, because it is a human issue. It's a human rights issue. I know people just a mile and a half from my home. The grandmother is documented, the mother is undocumented, and she has 2 undocumented children. This bill would have targeted the documented and the people who have papers in that home. We've seen lots of families separated because of this issue in South Georgia, but it is a real human issue.
Jeb, you work across several realms. You work in business, you work in the nonprofit world, and of course you're in the political realm. With a name like that, how could you not be? Jeb Bush Jr. Tell me what's important to you on this issue, and maybe some of the things you're working for.
Sure. As it relates to, as I mentioned before, based in South Florida and Miami, and extremely, and I always tell everyone it's the most diverse place in the country. So, we have a very vibrant, very transient city. So as it relates to business, you see it every day. I mean, it's something where you see people coming from all walks of life with huge aspirations that are willing to work hard, and they come to a country where it's easier to be here illegally than it is to be here legally. So, step one, it's just a huge problem for businesses that want to hire people, that want to expand. And also go in the other direction, I want to expand into other countries. It's good to have a workforce that understands the culture and the language. So through National Immigration Forum, honored to be on the board here, and also through SunPAC, our organization in Florida, really trying to reach out to the right, to the conservative party, because I think a lot of it's just really lost in translation. I think a lot of it has to do with tone and the way we talk about this issue. So one, reaching out to Hispanic and Latino communities and kind of conveying these conservative principles, but also reaching out to leaders, opinion leaders around the state or the country, to start changing the tone a little bit, to have a little more, softer rhetoric, and to get kind of like below the surface. I think that would be a pretty good start. I think anecdotally, what we've seen from this last election, the self-deportation comment certainly doesn't help. It's kind of a no-brainer. Now, if you dive down in the policy, yeah, maybe, honestly, I'm not sure what he was talking about, but, I've heard other people talk about, how you could kind of explain that issue. And so either way, on the surface, the 2-second soundbite, which is usually what most people hear, it doesn't come across well. And so I think when the party can't get their ducks in a line and get things done, we have this immigration issue as a country that can't put together some type of bipartisan or comprehensive immigration reform.
Bert, you testified before a House Judiciary Subcommittee several years ago.
Yep.
If you were asked to do that today, what would you say?
Pretty much the same thing as what I said then. We need immigration reform. We cannot continue the way we're going right now, and talking for agriculture specifically. The government says that 70% of the labor force in agriculture is undocumented. We use I-9, we use E-Verify, we use all the systems that are in place. That's not a solution. E-Verify is not the problem. E-Verify is not the solution either. Immigration reform is the solution, not at state level to get more enforcement. North Carolina is, we're getting ready to go under the train. July 1st, everybody's got to use E-Verify in North Carolina. There's a cutoff at 25 employees. It's going to be a disaster. The solution is not at state level. The solution is in Washington. And yeah, that's what I said, and I would say that again, and I hope that what we're talking about today will really come up with enough momentum that our elected officials will get the picture. The challenge that I see in our industry, in agriculture, is that not many farmers, ranchers are willing to talk up, because just as well as that fear is there under the employees, that same fear is there under the employers. That's not good, because that means it takes away energy from things that could be helping actually build the economy. And I think that's what we're all talking about. It's a human issue, no question about it, but it's also an economic issue. We need these people. They have been working for us, and I don't know how we could continue without them.
So the sector that perhaps needs change the most, or one of the sectors, business. Business leaders are afraid to speak out because of fear of audits, fear of, what would you say the major components that drive that fear?
The fear of you not following the law exactly. I mean, there's certain rules when you use an I-9 system. There's certain rules when you use an E-Verify system. If you fail in one way or another way, there's another department that will come after you. It's not only the audit, it's also if you ask the wrong question at the wrong time. You're looking for employees that are willing and able to thrive in the jobs that you have for them. It's not about, what a misunderstanding that a lot of people have is that, oh, well, you are not withholding taxes or Social Security. Give me a break. There is no, I'm sure there is a business, but normal business doesn't do that. We need a real solution, and the real solution comes out of Washington.
Mayor Bridges, the real solution comes out of Washington, and you're working primarily at the state level. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. But we've got to get the Washington Beltway outside of the Beltway, out into the states to see what the issues are. And I think that the National Immigration Forum has done that very well over the last few months. What the organization has done has brought this issue to a climax, and the solutions are there. And we've got to get Washington to move on these issues because, as you said, it's an economic issue. It's a human issue. For example, an economic issue, and I live in Uvalda, but I was born in Vidalia, Georgia, where the Vidalia onions come from. An acre of Vidalia onions pumps in 1,000, excuse me. Oh, Dr. Hill. Dr. Hill was also born in Uvalda, I found out, in Vidalia, I found out today. The Vidalia onion pumps in $7,800 into the economy per acre whenever we plant the onions. Well, if we don't have the farm labor to plant them and to harvest them and to bring them to the market, then we convert to the peanuts. And when you plant an acre of peanuts, you get $800 per acre that's pumped into the economy. So it is an economical issue, but it's a human issue too, because these people are ingrained in our community. They are a part of our social fabric. And to use terms like, well, they need to get in line or they don't pay taxes, that's hogwash. It's just not true. And when you apply the critical thinking again to what the situation actually is, you find that it's just not what the people have been taught. We've been told lies, and it's time to expose those lies. And I think that the forum has done that. I look forward to what has been done with this forum to be moved out and federal legislation be put out for it.
Pastor David, you're working across the state of Texas, and the question I have is, are you finding that other states are watching you, particularly those faith communities, and the work that you're doing in your church, but also across, you said, 1,000 pastors? Tell us about other states, other churches interested in your work there in Texas.
Well, about 6 years ago, we had a Spanish mission, which is pretty common in Anglo churches who want to reach the world. And so if there are Spanish speakers in the community, they'll start a Spanish mission and kind of meets out in the fellowship hall or maybe out back somewhere. And that's okay. I'm not judging that. But we had a vision that what if instead of having a Spanish mission, we had a church that reached all people and found a way to integrate all people into one body. So we call it one church in two languages. And as I mentioned, we're adding languages. But that model caused us to look at people differently, not based on their ethnicity or their language or other demographic variables, but to look at people as people and to find a way to incorporate them into one body. That was the thing in our church that really, I think, helped us move forward as we began to see ourselves as one people and how we could work together. Certainly, my conviction is if the church can't lead the way in bringing people together in spite of their obvious differences, then society as a whole is pretty much in trouble, because the church ought to be the place where we look past our differences. And of course, from my perspective, by the grace of God, we overcome those divisions and differences and we unite as one body in Christ. So that's become what I hope is a model for other churches to begin to look at how you bring Anglo, African American, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Easterns all together under one roof, one body, even if there are language differences, but to create one people from many. And I think that could be a model for our communities. And just like the mayor said, the sound bites go away. People start looking with their eyes and listening with their ears to the bigger picture and realizing their part in that. And I think maybe if we have anything to offer, I hope it'll be that we start seeing ourselves as one people instead of various sub-factions and groups of people who just can't seem to get together. If we can build that consensus, that's got to be something good for our country. That's where we're going. It's no turning back. I mean, we're there. We've got to embrace it and learn how to work with it.
Are there issues unique to Texas that really are more important there than other parts of the country?
Well, I would say probably not unique to Texas. I'm sure Florida, I know Arizona and California, but Texas, we're along the border. We're a border state. And in the conversation about comprehensive immigration reform, while that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, one thing for us in Texas that has to mean is that we do something to secure the national borders. And in Houston, we are reluctantly being identified. I'm not sure if it's a true statement or not again, but we're being identified as a hub of human trafficking because of our proximity to the port, to the border, to the diversity of our city that makes it so easy to fit in and blend in for a lot of reasons. Human trafficking is climbing the ladder of success, if you will, in organized crime, and we see it every day in Houston, and it's horrific. We're talking about the helpless and the least and the lost that are being physically, sexually exploited in all kinds of ways and manners. And this entire concept of immigration reform has to come back around to obviously giving those folks rights and privileges so that they are less likely to be exploited, but also to stop the flow of that trafficking and the illegal immigration that our system right now is actually, I believe, promoting and fostering, if not certainly allowing to happen. So in Texas, we really have to do something about our borders, or the solutions we propose will be temporary at best. We'll be right back here again in 10 years. We're having the same conversation because we did not create an opportunity for people to come legally and stop the flow of illegal entry.
Thank you. Jeb, I wonder if you might imagine a day when we're all together again, but with thousands more, and we're celebrating legislation, and it's a legislation that we're proud of. And you're asked to give a speech. You're asked to come to the podium and say, to describe the journey that led to the success. What do you see in the next 12 months, 2 years? What key factors are essential to have a comprehensive immigration reform bill that we're proud of?
Sure. And that's, I think, a very good question and something I've been thinking about a lot recently, not just post-election as it relates to, a lot of people are asking why, immigration reform is a big focus now. I mean, this has been a big focus for a long time. The problem is we haven't gotten anything done. So I guess the question is, do you kind of find certain wrinkles in immigration reform, focusing on things like the DREAM Act or medical visas or the e-visa program, expanding that side of it, or do you do a comprehensive package that involves kind of the whole loaf of bread, if you will? Ideally, if it was up to me, it would be comprehensive immigration reform, that you dealt with the whole issue economically, education, as it relates to health and science, technology, as Steve Case was talking about earlier. I mean, this is a huge economic driver that we're not taking advantage of. But the thing that needs to happen, I think, is leadership. I think you have to have leadership at the federal level, the state level, the local level. This is, again, either the president, Senate Majority Leader, House Majority Leader, across the board need to be driving this. So hopefully that happens. I think that will be the catalyst that really drives the issue over the edge. So hopefully President Obama takes this opportunity, leads our country, and gets this done, because our country needs it.
That's great. We're going to turn to questions in a moment from the audience, but before we do, last question for all of you. We'll just go down the line, starting with Mayor Bridges. What's the one thing that needs to happen in the next 12 months, from your perspective? The one thing, if you can summarize it in just a sentence or two, the one thing, most important thing, next 12 months, from your perspective on this issue. Mayor.
My Republican friends here in the Beltway look at this issue for what it really is: economic, family, social, and put forward legislation using the precepts that this forum has come up with, the consensus that this forum has, and put that legislation out there and do it now. Fix the problem.
Again, going back to leadership, I think if it was up to me, it'd be a part of a grand bargain, a huge issue as relates to also education reform and immigration reform. I think having bipartisan support, having leaders from both parties come together and say enough is enough and let's move forward.
Yeah, I think across the board, a return to civility would be a great step in the right direction, and let's agree that our nation's problems are bigger than any one party can solve, and we need to work together. I hope that we're building a consensus, as we've said, from outside the Beltway that will have implications within the Beltway, so that those who are elected as our leaders will discover, perhaps for the first time, I think the country's well ahead of them on this issue. I think they ought to catch up.
I think what we need to address the mistakes that have been made in the past. We have to address the situation today, and we have to make sure that we don't fall in the same trap, so we got to address the future when it comes to immigration reform.
Thanks to you all. I'm very grateful. Ali, questions from the audience? Are the immigration views of business, politics, law enforcement, and faith leaders determined mainly by their institutional interests or more by personal factors such as life exposure, religious faith, etc.? Anybody? Institutional or personal? What are the main drivers?
I think both. Yeah, I would say both. I mean, as it relates to business and kind of just as a business guy, you know, it's about being competitive. I mean, that's the bottom line. And you need to have a competitive workforce. You have to have a competitive product to succeed. And I think, you know, going back again to what Steve Case was talking about, capital will follow people. And it's all about, you know, betting on the management teams as it relates to investing in businesses and growing companies. So with that said, I mean, yeah, it's institutional. It's at the core of being a capitalist, you know, and then personal because you want to survive. You want to be a successful business. So I guess that's the answer to it.
It's definitely a combination for me of business and personal. I'm an immigrant. I came here with a visa. I got a green card. I finally became a U.S. citizen. And I know that under the current system, for those employed in agriculture, there is no line that they can go to the back of. So it's business and personal, and I feel very strong about that.
Not all immigrants are Christians. What can we do to help incorporate them and their faith into this conversation? David, you want to take that question?
Well, I'll admit my bias that I would like all immigrants to become Christians. And I have a great church that I would love to invite them to in Northwest Houston. It's called Champion Forest Baptist Church. But that aside, you know, America is the land of opportunity for all people. The folks that live across the street from me are Muslim, and we are good friends. I have a key to their home, and I know the security lock to get in their house, and every time they go out of town, we party. But just kidding. This is bigger initially than my church and even my particular faith persuasion. I'm very convicted about my faith persuasion, as you probably can tell. But I also understand that an immigrant is an immigrant, and we're not checking their immigrant status at the door of our church, or their ethnicity, or their language, or their nationality, or the color of their skin. You know, we have a commandment to love people. That's how we flesh out our love for God. It's how we give evidence of or witness to our love for God. And frankly, and the last question kind of dovetails into this, I really believe America has an accountability to God with regard to this issue and how we treat the folks that are coming to our shores, regardless of their background or their particular persuasion.
That's great. And again, once again, deference to the Catholic Church, for which we're greatly indebted. I'm an evangelical, in full disclosure, but I make the sign of the cross every day because of my Catholic brothers and sisters and our heritage there. So, next question: what would you give people? What would you give to people in the States to get the groups you represent on board with a good reform bill? Oh, sorry. What advice would you give to people to get people on board with a good reform bill? Mayor Bridges, you want to take that question?
We are inclined to fix anything that's broken if it's mechanical. When they bring the Vadalians in from the field and they put them on the conveyor belt and they go over to the packing and they get graded by the skilled hands as they're going along the conveyor belt, if that conveyor belt breaks, we're going to fix it right then. We're going to find that master mechanic and we're going to fix it right then. But when the part that provides those skilled hands breaks, we seem to ignore it. And we seem to be pushing on down the line. Well, I think that the new consensus that we have is the master mechanic to fix this problem with immigration. So an immigration law pushed forward by the legislature and make it happen now will fix it. And the answer is fix it.
There have been so many great thoughts and speakers today. Are they all willing to go on Fox News and represent or give a different voice for immigrants and immigration reform? Who's going to sign up?
Now,
Fox
do you
News.
really think Fox is going to let me be on their channel?
Maybe some of you been. Jeb, have you been on Fox News, perhaps?
I have not. I have not. But yeah, be honored to go on the show.
David's nodding, and Bert?
Problem. No, but I think it is important that it doesn't matter. It goes from county commissioners to senators, from the local sheriff to the leading law enforcement official in the state. You gotta speak up and explain the issue. The majority of our population, our voters, does not know. They do not understand that there is not a line where they can go back into. They do not understand that these people pay taxes and Social Security, wherever that goes.
Sounds like Bert needs to go on Fox News. Last question. Given that 35% of the Republican base is anti-immigrant, and the chair of the House Immigration Subcommittee is anti-immigrant, how do you see overcoming this to get new immigration legislation for the 21st century? Jeb, you want to tackle that one?
I would be curious to know where that data point came from, but and what anti-immigrant means. But again, I think this is a question of tone. I think it's a question of understanding the issue, aggregating the data, and making that economic case. You can make it faith-based, economic. I think it's based on the what part of the country you come from has kind of a unique niche, and again, data points that you drive. I think we're at the core of conservatism. It's about being almost libertarian. I mean, being individual responsibility, having freedom, and I think conveying that message to the base. You just have to drive down, go on Fox News, and pass on the message. And I think the data points are there. I mean, that you have to drive home. So I would encourage everyone here, to go home and to respective either businesses or legislatures to take the data points. I'm sure the forum would be honored to provide them for y'all. That it makes a difference economically, education, and socially. So,
Stephen, I won't overstate the obvious, but we're all at heart pretty pragmatic, and this recent election puts things into perspective for that group of people. If you want to think about what it means to alienate an entire group of people, constituents, voters in America, and the impact on that when you have elections that are 1 or 2 percentage points apart. I don't know how you can hold to one and the other at the same time. It sure seems like that ought to move us to go, okay, wait a minute, maybe we need to rethink this. If working and pragmatism is important, that position didn't work real well last November.
One way to handle this too is it doesn't cost you anything to reach over and pick up your cell phone and dial 202-224-3121 and ask for your representative or senator and tell them what the problem is.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Last word, Matt, my colleague, said something that happened, a seismic change in churches was we recognize that they are us.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Catholics would say the same thing. But isn't that true for all of us? If we go to the business sector, I had the privilege of walking the orchard, the Brochi orchard, for several days, and began very quickly to understand that they are us in the Brochi orchard. In fact, more of their family members in their lineage is now Hispanic, Latino, than Caucasian. And they don't refer to them as not immigrants, but not even employees, but community members, friends. And if we were to ask everyone in this room who is not an immigrant, if you look back 1, 2, and 3 generations, I come from Holland too, just not as recent as you, they are us. So it's one. And we have unity there on human dignity, people that we love and we care for. So thank you to the panelists. This was a great session. We're grateful.
Thank you.
good job, man. Good seeing you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, panel. We're going to take a final 10-minute break and then plow through to the final panel and closing speaker. Great.
this end.